The Democratic Republic of Congo, a nation blessed with abundant natural resources, has been tragically plagued by conflict for decades. To understand this ongoing crisis, one must delve into the country's tumultuous past, particularly the legacy of Belgian colonialism. Belgium's rule, spanning from 1908 to 1960, was characterized by brutal exploitation and a deliberate strategy of divide and rule. The Belgian authorities prioritized profit over the welfare of the Congolese people. Forced labor, inhumane punishments, and widespread discrimination were the hallmarks of this era. Moreover, Belgium implemented policies that exacerbated existing ethnic tensions, sowing seeds of discord that continue to plague the DRC today. The arbitrary borders drawn by Belgium during the infamous Scramble for Africa further complicated matters. These borders ignored existing ethnic and tribal boundaries, grouping together disparate communities with different languages, customs, and aspirations. This disregard for the complexities of Congolese society created a fertile ground for future conflicts as competition for resources and power intensified along ethnic lines. The hasty departure of Belgium in 1960 left the newly independent DRC ill-prepared for self-governance. The lack of a cohesive national identity, coupled with weak institutions and a legacy of mistrust, created a power vacuum that various factions and neighboring countries were quick to exploit. The wounds of the past continued to bleed into the present, fueling a cycle of violence and instability. The DRC is a land of paradox. While endowed with vast mineral wealth, including diamonds, gold, coltan, and cobalt, this very abundance has become a curse. The DRC is a textbook example of the resource curse, a phenomenon where resource-rich countries often experience greater poverty, corruption, and conflict than those with fewer resources. The DRC's mineral wealth, instead of being a blessing, has fueled and financed armed groups and militias. These groups, driven by greed and power, exploit the country's resources to fund their operations, purchase weapons, and enrich themselves. This illicit trade in conflict minerals perpetuates the cycle of violence, as armed groups fight for control of mines and smuggling routes. The insatiable global demand for these minerals, particularly for use in electronics and other industries, creates a lucrative market for armed groups. International corporations and consumers, often unknowingly, become complicit in this trade as they benefit from the low prices of goods produced using conflict minerals. The resource curse has had a devastating impact on the DRC's development. It has hindered economic diversification as the focus on mineral extraction comes at the expense of other sectors such as agriculture and manufacturing. Moreover, the prevalence of corruption and illicit financial flows associated with the mineral trade deprives the government of much-needed revenue for essential services such as healthcare and education. The DRC's turbulent history has been marked by weak governance, endemic corruption, and a failure to address the root causes of conflict. The legacy of colonialism left the country with fragile institutions and a political system ill-equipped to manage its vast territory and diverse population. The post-independence era saw the rise of authoritarian rule, most notably under Mobutu Sese Seko, who plundered the country's wealth and exacerbated ethnic divisions for personal gain. Subsequent governments have struggled to establish stability, provide basic services, or effectively address the grievances of marginalized communities. This lack of good governance has created a void, allowing armed groups to flourish and exploit local grievances. Ethnic tensions, often rooted in historical grievances and competition for resources, have been a persistent source of conflict in the DRC. These tensions have been exploited by politicians and armed groups who manipulate ethnic identities to mobilize support and fuel violence. The 1994 Rwandan genocide, which spilled over into eastern DRC, further exacerbated ethnic tensions and created a complex web of alliances and rivalries. The absence of a strong national identity, coupled with weak institutions and a legacy of mistrust, has hindered efforts at reconciliation and peace-building. The DRC's fragmented society, where loyalty to one's ethnic group often supersedes national allegiance, presents a significant challenge to achieving lasting peace. Section 4. The Shadow of Neighbors, Regional Interference in the DRC. The DRC's conflicts are not solely internal matters. The country has long been a pawn in a complex geopolitical chess game, with neighboring countries seeking to advance their own interests at the expense of Congolese sovereignty. Regional actors, driven by a combination of security concerns, economic ambitions, and political calculations, have played a significant role in fueling and prolonging the DRC's conflicts. Rwanda, haunted by the 1994 genocide and the presence of Hutu militias in eastern DRC, has repeatedly intervened militarily, justifying its actions as necessary to protect its national security. Uganda, too, has been heavily involved in the DRC, seeking to secure its western border and exploit the country's mineral wealth. These interventions have often had disastrous consequences, leading to widespread human rights abuses, displacement, and a further fragmentation of the Congolese state. The presence of foreign armies and proxy militias on Congolese soil has complicated the conflict dynamics, making it even more difficult to achieve a lasting peace. These external actors often prioritize their own narrow interests over the well-being of the Congolese people, perpetuating a cycle of violence and instability. The international community, while condemning these interventions, has often been slow to act decisively. The lack of a robust international response has created a climate of impunity, emboldening regional actors to continue their interference with little fear of consequences.